I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarland. Fridays, we connect with our colleagues at the African American Child Wellness Institute. We call it the Healing Circle. And our goal is to do that, to demonstrate what healing is, how healing works, to claim ownership of our capacity to identify challenges and create cause, execute healing on our own behalf of our bodies, of our minds, of our community. We normally start the program with the powerful message music of Gary Hines and the Sounds of Blackness, Time for Reparations. I wanted to kind of experiment a little bit to see how it works without the music. Some people once said that, it's a great song, but it takes 4 or 5 minutes to get into it. And are we losing people before they get to the conversation? I don't know the answer, but I'd like for you to tell me if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook, whether that music or other music is better, whether maybe a specialized, unique theme song for this program is something we should consider. I'd like your thoughts, your ideas. The other thing is that we're using uh, three modalities at the same time. A few of you are connecting with YouTube. We really want to grow our presence on YouTube. I want to figure out, and I'm asking for help, how do we create a subscriber base of at minimum 1,000 subscribers? If you are a subscriber and have an idea of how to do it and how to share this with other people, I'm asking for your help. I'd like for you to tell me, how do we expand our subscriber base? If you're listening and not a subscriber, do subscribe. Do that right now and be a part of getting notices every time we go live. Now, I mentioned we're on three modalities. One is YouTube. It's the Insight News Al McFarland YouTube page channel. Glad to have that and glad to connect. We want to always be able to respond to you and have you participate through that channel. But we also celebrate the relationship we have with the National Newspaper Publishers Association, NNPA, the Black Press of America. And through them, we are going live across Facebook through Black Press USA. What a powerful opportunity. What a wonderful opportunity. We are glad to be members of, supporters of the Black Press of America. And I want to take a minute to always thank my colleagues in the field, reporters, journalists, owners of newspapers, TV and radio stations, people committed to telling our own story. And to do that, I have to always go back to the legacy of the Black Press of America. I'm reading Frederick Douglass. I just finished reading it, Frederick Douglass, his narrative, The Slave Narratives. And Douglass was one of the early pioneers in Black journalism. But what he did was talked about the power of literacy, the value of reading. And I was in a conversation this morning with a potential customer of mine. We own Insight newspaper here in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And we were talking about how do we convince our people to not be caught up with the idea that reading is dying, that print is dead. Even though we're here on social media right now, even though this is digital media, and we know how important and how expansive and how powerful it is, do we want to make sure that we don't get lulled into, tricked into surrendering our capacity to read print, to read the printed word, to know the printed word, to understand the value of the historical record that the printed word represents. So I throw that out to you, both in praise of the work of the Black Press of America and in praise of the visionary leaders who knew that our capacity to tell our own story and to create our own narrative has been one of the key elements for our success in the pursuit of freedom and the ability to maintain our freedom in a world that is aligned against us and against our interests. We have to always be able to command the space that allows us to define who we are, what we're doing, where we're going. So we do that. Finally, I want to acknowledge what we have here in Minnesota through what we call the McFarland Media Dashboard. We use our newspaper Insight News, and we use our Facebook and Twitter and Instagram accounts to generate engagement and content. If you connect in any of those platforms, we want to thank you for that and invite you to help us grow it. Our goal is to grow engagement, to demonstrate this seamless connection between the print, the digital, and how we interact with each other in person, face to face. Create protocols that encourage us to be with each other, to celebrate each other, to see each other, and to demonstrate that as we see each other, we see the future, and we see the capacity, the need, the ability to write, to craft, to envision and tell a story in which we win. Well, with that, I'm going to go to open the program up today and call on my sister and leader, Dr. Bravada Garrett Akansanya, who is the power behind the African American Child Wellness Institute. And Dr. B, let me say this one more time too. You know, your company, Brakens Consulting, is a psychological services company. I'm telling everybody I can that I happen to be a customer of your company. I have a therapist that I visit with every week, and I am so happy and so glad to be a customer of yours for 3 reasons. One is I need help. I'm a guy that's still trying to become, and I have the good sense to not be embarrassed or to not fail to seek out advice, counseling, feedback, that can help me be me. That's
right.
huge. Secondly, I'm in business, you're in business, I'm doing business with you. I want your business to grow, and I love it that you want my business to grow, that we both
Yes,
are
I do.
committed to growing our business. And finally, both of these things model the relationships that ought to exist among us. We
That's
have
right.
and we are an economy that can work and does work. And it's not only between the two of our companies and us as individuals. This process, this protocol can exist between all of us on the planet, all of our
That's
people. So with that, Dr. B, good afternoon. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarland and the Healing Circle. And I'm going to ask you to do what you always do, is talk about this process that we call the healing stick, and why we do this, you know, the protocol of us being together.
Well, thank you so much, Al. I did notice the music wasn't there,
I
but I
had
have
my
to tell you.
earplugs off, so now
Oh,
I hear
okay.
you. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I said I did notice that our regular pep rally music was not there, but
Mhm.
what you just said was music to my ears. I feel so inspired and excited to be here. And I love the way you center us on purpose from the past to the present. I love the notion of us seeing ourselves as community treasures and tools for change and agents for change. And so this healing circle, as you know, just was originated because we have such a need for healing in our communities. And the healing takes place on so many levels. Our minds, our bodies, our spirit, our finances, our relationships, our sense of connectedness to the world around us. So it's so much healing that we need, having been oppressed for hundreds of years in this country. So the reason we have the healing circle is to create a space. There was once a wise woman who told me that you don't have to teach a cut how to heal. You just need to create the conditions for the healing to take place. So I see this as one way of creating condition and space for healing to take place. And so in this circle, the reason we call it a circle is because the African belief of using the circle is because everyone in the circle has equal access to the center of power, to the center of the circle. And that no matter how old or young or educated formally or uneducated formally, or what your social economic status is in that circle, we notice that we're equal as brothers and sisters. I'm getting okay.
Yeah.
We're equal as brothers and sisters. So in the circle, first we give honor. We honor the people on whose land we stand. We honor the peoples of the indigenous tribes of the Lakota Nation. We honor our ancestors. We honor our elders. And we honor our elders because they're close to our ancestors. And we honor our ancestors because they're close to the Creator. We honor each other in circle, and we use the talking stick although it's virtual, we use the talking stick as a way of maintaining order, attending to voice, signifying, and testifying. So every one of us has a space. We can ask for the stick, or the stick can be brought to us. And if we don't have anything to say, we can pass the stick. So in our community, that respect for voice and that respect for value is what makes this space a healing space. And so with that, I'm going to just say that today's topic that we are really trying to focus on is around healing, but it's also around the idea of politics. So the topic for today's healing circle is the impact of politics on mental health of vulnerable communities. The impact of politics on the mental health of vulnerable communities. And I want to start that conversation with something I just discovered yesterday. My sister sent me an email saying that in Tennessee, there was a judge who was arresting Black children, boys and girls from school, sending for them to be arrested. And when they come in front of her court, she imprisons them. So if there's a fight at school, the police get them, the judge would just go ahead and put them in jail. And the kids that were in jail were as young as 6 years old. And these babies were being taken by the police in the back of the squad car to the jailhouse and locked up. She had been doing this for years, and it got so bad until they filed a class action lawsuit. This has been going on for years in Tennessee. Then they asked for they offered the class action lawsuit people, complainants, $11 million. But I told my husband, I'm sure there are more than 11 kids who have had that experience. So with that, I think about politics, I think about policy, and how our Black bodies are used, abused, and just constantly harmed and negated. And with that, I want to pass the talking stick to my sister Brenda Lyles Gray, see what she's got going on today as we talk about politics and the mental health of vulnerable people. So, sister, you got the stick. And you're muted.
Now I am. Well, good afternoon to everyone. And Dr. B, a very good subject. I've been following the athletes, not wanting to take the vaccine and willing to give up $200,000 and $300,000, and Washington, D.C. It's baffling again. I think I said that last week, but now we're up to 715,000 people who are gone, and more children getting the COVID. And but I think there's a plus in all of this, and that's the fact that mental health is getting a front seat in the attention box. They're asking now, Al was interviewing Sheriff David Hutchison with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Department. So what they have done in this program called HOPE, and Al, you'll have to get me on the project acronym. I forgot what it all means, but getting back to mental health, they have hired a social worker, they've hired a mental health specialist, and they've hired a fitness person, because they said if their employees cannot take care of themselves, if they are not happy on the job, if they are not doing rewarding things, then there is no way that they can help people in the community. And that just hit to me, because those are the areas that we really need to concentrate on, and especially with our children. I never will forget Daryl Gillespie when he said those kids came into his office because they felt safe. And I'm wondering, when you said that about the young people in Tennessee, how many of our children are trying to learn, but they're so traumatized and they don't feel safe at home, at school, in the classroom, in the neighborhood. It's big, but we're going to have to start taking little pieces at a time and fitting this puzzle together. Al and I've been involved with Sean Lewis, who has opened up a Pandora's box when it comes to philanthropy. And we're finding out, I was tuned in yesterday for quite a while in a podcast on philanthropy. And our communities are getting, they gave a figure of $200 billion, and we're getting about 6% of it. And we're the ones all across the country whose communities are being adversely affected. So we're going to have to stand up too. Communities, BIPOC communities all around the country are going to have to understand we've been injured and we deserve to have a piece of the pie. And we're going to have to start doing our homework. We're going to have to start researching. I wanted to send my friend an email thanking him this morning. He sent me this note and he said, Brenda, there should have been a table of grant makers for that Verizon money that could have gone into some classrooms and equipped. And so you should have had researchers and grant makers and people writing these the right way. Because one of the articles I did was the fact that they have a team. And when I say they, the people who have normally gotten this money to do programming, because we need you in the schools. We need clones of Dr. B to say, look, those kids in the back seat of that police car, that's going to stay with them for a long, long time, if not forever. So, I'm positive. You know, I heard Spike Moss. I know the data. I know the numbers, but we're going to have to take those numbers and put them into action. And that action has got to embrace our children because they really, really are hurt. I can't even fathom the fact of these little 6 and 7-year-old kids being in jail. That's beyond me, but not surprising, not at all. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Miss Flowers, but I think, Al, would you like to introduce her?
Oh, Dr. B, why don't you do the honors? Unmute, please.
Mute.
I
There you go.
love to hear, to have that opportunity for people to hear from Sister Lawanda Flowers. She's a part of our team, our outreach team. She's a just what's the word? Invaluable team member as she works with a Mother's Love program, and they show a lot of love to all of us. I don't care how old you are, you're going to get some Mother's Love from Lawanda and the rest of the team over at a Mother's Love. So, Sister Lawanda, I would like for you to have the talking stick and just introduce yourself even further and just tell us what you think about this conversation on politics and the policies that affect people who are vulnerable in our community. So just unmute yourself and go at it, honey. We're welcome to the Talk Healing Circle.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Lawanda Flowers. I work with A Mother's Love. Last name may sound familiar to some. You may know my brother, Al Flowers, and then my sister, who is the executive director and CEO of A Mother's Love, Elisa Clemens. When I think of this subject matter, it's amazing. I was thinking of the story that you just told, and I'm wondering in the mindset of the adults who accepted this policy for these children to be arrested and put in jail, and what was their mindset? What were they trying to teach them? Did they look into the fact of why are they acting this way? What's going on in their lives to cause them to even have to be put in this predicament, to be arrested, to brought before a judge, to did they dig deep to figure out what's going on with them? What's their mindset? What's happening? What's going on with their parents' mindsets? It's a big slope, and to me what they did was dug that valley a little bit deeper for those children, because that to me would not solve the problem at hand. And so I think it's scary that they would even consider the fact that would solve all their problems by using that example. I don't understand the aspect of that, and that really bothers me a lot. And I don't know. You did mention. I mean, was this people of color that this happened
Black
to?
children. All of them
Okay,
were Black children.
So then again, why would they think that this is a tool for our children? Why would they think that this is a necessary tool? What are you teaching them? And furthermore, what you would have taught them to me was to be afraid.
Yeah.
To be afraid of that aspect. You're supposed to be a helping hand for us. So what you did was you taught me to fear you. You taught me to fear politics. You taught me to fear justice. You taught me to fear all of that. And so I would really love to have been a fly on the wall to sit and think about who came up with this and thought that this was going to be okay. That's really, I would love to know, because that wouldn't have worked for me. It would have probably, I mean, I've never been in trouble. I think I stole once when I was 9 years old. I got caught and never did it again. Before that fear, I'm that person that, how as women we have stuff in our hand, a little mascara or something, and I might walk out of the store, get in my car, and I will go all the way back in and like, hey, I forgot to pay for this. That's my mindset of, and it was from that one little incident when I was 9 years old. You know what I mean? I never wanted to experience that again. So it worked on me. That incident worked on me, but I didn't come from any, trauma in my background. I didn't come from that. So for me, when I'm looking at the kids nowadays, so much is happening, and they're coming from so much trauma for someone to think that by causing more trauma, you're healing trauma makes no sense to me at all. That makes no sense to me. You have actually um, messed up more their psyche. You have damaged them even more. And
Yeah.
so that's pretty much all I had to say. It's, that's, I can't even put into words how that makes me feel on my heart to even know
Mhm.
that that's real, that really happened.
Mhm.
My heart
Yeah.
is broken behind that because
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I don't understand that.
Thank you, sister. That I think I'm taking the stick from you. Sorry, were you through? Okay, I'm taking the stick. But what I want to say is that what you said was very powerful, and it centers on valuing our little babies, their black bodies, who they are, their potential. It means that we have to have a group of people who see our children as if they're their own children. Would they throw their own children in jail, a 6-year-old at school getting arrested by a police officer because she misbehaved on the playground, and putting her in the back of a squad car and taking her to jail and locking her up behind the bars and having her sit there until a lawyer or her mama or somebody can come get her out? That's just, to me, it's just pure, it's just insanity. And but more importantly, it exhibits this principle we call mental sides, where one, in order to oppress someone else, you have to psychologically, mentally kill them off as humans. You have to kill their humanity. They're less than human. So therefore, you can treat them more like animals than you would like people. And a rabid dog you may put behind bars or shoot, but you're a child that's acting out that happens to be black. That's the one that gets put in jail. If the white kids acted out, I'm assuming they would call their mothers or maybe give a discipline after school or suspension, but they weren't calling police, and that's why they they had they had that class action suit of $11 million, and I still don't think that's enough because they're hurting not just their present but their future. I see here with my talking stick that our brother, Dr. Oliver Williams, has stepped into the conversation, and he does his work mostly around community and intimate partner violence. And I'd like for you to take the talking stick, Brother Oliver. Welcome to the show. Today we are
Thanks.
really talking. You're welcome. We're talking about impact of politics on vulnerable populations. So you got the floor. We were just talking again about uh, uh, Tennessee arresting judge in Tennessee arresting black children, and putting them in jail as young as 6.
Yeah, and that behavior strikes me that judge doesn't know very much. That what happens is that they fly by the seat of their pants and they haven't been educated about what to think about. There are judges that I know that have done a lot of work on their own to be educated about different sets of things. But when you see somebody that behaves that way, I don't think that they know very much, and that they're making these judgments based on their own biases. And uh, I think about when I was a delinquency worker, and I'd have kids on my caseload that would do all kinds of stuff. But there was a difference between how they treated kids of color and how they treated white kids. And what they would do is that they would try to find the most restrictive environment for a child of color and the least restrictive environment for, white kids. This one situation sticks in my mind where there was a young boy who was he was doing wrong, and he got caught up in the system for doing wrong. His mother wasn't as supportive of him as he needed to be, as she needed to be. And he got caught, got put in the system, and that once he got into the system, the people that were his supervisors, other youth workers, didn't treat him especially well. And so this one guy ended up throwing basketballs at this kid and trying to be oppressive to the kid when the kid wanted to opt out. He didn't want to participate in what this guy wanted him to do. And they treated him badly. But there was another kid that they tried to find the least restrictive environment. We tried to get him to be at home. And he and his brother and a girl that they found decided that they wanted to go and rob people. And they ended up developing a plan to jump out, have the little girl lay out in front of the road, have the car stop, and then they'd rob the people, in the cars. And the thing that was interesting about it, they planned on killing this one woman whose car got stopped. Now, this other young man, the black young man, he ended up with his buddy trying to rob people too. But what was interesting to me is that when both kids, for what they were doing, got sent to the system, they tried to still find the least restrictive environment for the kid who was trying to murder people. And for the kid that was trying to rob people, even though both of them were wrong, they tried to find the most restrictive environment for it. That didn't make sense to me at all. And then particularly when the one kid, the black kid, he was just trying not to participate in some sort of athletic activity that he had, rather than the other kid that was literally trying to go and murder somebody. So, you go through something like that, and then you listen to the judge and their decision where the youth worker was trying to hit this kid. And then the referee ends up taking the side of the youth worker rather than the side of the child. So those were things that ended up disheartening me when you would see these differences in how children were treated. And you look at issues associated with disparities and what kids go through and what they walk away with. We did that one study on the north side that we're talking to kids about their experiences in the communities. And one of their observations was that the fact that they felt like the judicial system or the law enforcement systems were very, very different. That there was a store that they would close because they were selling, weapons or selling, drugs. But then they see them open up later and quickly, and as if it was like a place that would attract people that would do specific types of things. But the kids saw the disparities of it, whether they were young kids or whether they were older kids. So I think the vision about how different communities were treated, does affect how people see the world and see their circumstance and see, and the things that we hear regularly in terms of how people get protest. And we saw it in the George Floyd situation. So, that speaks volumes in terms of, the issue of politics and how, how people view different communities and how they're visited on in different ways that demonstrate disparities. But the question is, who believes you? And then what actions will they take to try to change it? And, so, that's my thoughts about it. I just think that we have to deal with the perceptions but also how do you end up getting people to act on changing those situations? Because either explicitly or implicitly, they may be carrying these perceptions around, and it affects how kids interact in the world, and adults interact in the
That's
world.
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you so much. And to me, I'm hearing over and over in each person's narrative that we see from these systemic injustices that there's a kind of meta message, and that message is you don't matter, that you're not of value, you're not worthy, you're not as good as me or white kids or white adults or white communities. It's just saying over and over, you don't matter. So I'm with that, I'm going to pass the talking stick to Brother Al to do his thing. So Brother Al, I'm giving you the talk.
Thank you, Dr. B. I'll take it. This is such a wonderful conversation, and all I can do is sort of replay the images that are flying through my mind and spirit as we speak, and as each of you share. And so they may not be connected as I report them. I'm simply reporting out feelings and awarenesses or observations that come out of this conversation. And you know, as we were talking first, I'm still focused on the slave narratives of Frederick Douglass. And Frederick Douglass talked about not knowing when he was born, didn't know how old he was because uh, yeah, records were not kept. And there probably was some intentionality in not having the enslaved children, people, see themselves as functional members of society, as human beings whose birth and death mattered outside of their position as property of an asset of a farmer. So that's one impression. But he talked about um, how being whipped, was the norm, that owners of our people, some of them felt they had a duty to lay the lash to our backs. That part of what it meant to be an owner, to be a master, to be in control of the environment that they felt they were uh, given stewardship over, that environment, including our existence as whose humanity was disregarded, right? But he talks specifically about beatings, getting beat, getting whipped from uh, young adulthood on, and that some masters would beat people for no reason, saying that they are going to beat you for things you might do in the future, and some would beat you for not showing up on your position in the field on time, for taking more than the 5 minutes allotted, for the slop you had to eat on the so-called meal break in the cotton fields. And we just described this horrific condition that our people lived under, right? And he talked about how the system was where when children were born, that they were taken from their parents and raised by a grandparent or an old person, not a grandparent, somebody's grandparent, not theirs, but an older person who had no more use because they couldn't work the fields anymore and weren't probably useful in household chores. So that person, that woman was assigned the job of raising a group of infant children and children that were being raised so that they can be worked in the future. This was a balance sheet situation. It's a question of economy, their money, their wealth, and we were the product. Um, and so I bring that forward to this conversation. I'm not sure if this connection is going to work, but Dr. Williams, Dr. B, I was thinking, the image came to my mind about as we navigate our way in this society, we're always conscious and aware of systemic uh, structural barriers to our freedom, to our sense of safety, of our sense of being able to say without a doubt to the world that we belong here, that we are right and nobody can take that from us, because we know that somebody can kill us anytime. And then in certain places, it's white people, but we also know that we're potentially victims of our own people who are like us, uh, encapsulated in a dynamic that is managed, controlled, and um, and potentially fatal, bad for our health. Sometimes the system, the structure. The beauty is that we've discovered the capacity, the strength of the will, the wisdom that is indwelling, that allows us to make assessments and adjustments and to navigate towards both sustainability and in some cases, um, uh, you know, a move towards uh, abundance, even despite all the negative intent and the brutality of the environment. That's the beauty of knowing who we are. And that knowing who we are still remains a threat to the structures that were in place to dominate, subjugate, and to prevent our becoming fully healed, fully aware, free of the lash, right? Free of the lash, where the idea of the lash was not driving us either directly or indirectly, but free to imagine new worlds, new possibilities, um, new ideas, new relationships that reveal something beautiful about what it means to be a human being, about life, about food, right? About work, about love, right? About our connection in family and in, So anyway, those are the thoughts that this conversation brings to me. And I don't know where to go with it except for to be, a responder. I want to say, sort of parenthetically here to those who might be watching on YouTube and on Facebook, we want to grow this conversation, bring you into the conversation, have your voice, your ideas, and ask you to help us do that. So we are projecting this on YouTube. We've got about 163, I think, subscribers to this channel right now, but we want 1,000 subscribers. And I'm asking anybody listening right now who is social media savvy, aware, interested, to help us grow this channel. We want to reach a minimum of 1,000 subscribers to this channel, to this program every week. So if you're listening, you're watching, if you have the chance to subscribe to this program, do it now. Subscribe, like it, and share it. If you're watching on Facebook, do the same thing, like and share. The beauty of this is that we're using a variety of channels. These programs are also being presented on cable television in Minneapolis and cable television in St. Paul. We're airing 3 times a day, 5 days a week in St. Paul, at SPNN 3 times a day, 5 days a week in Minneapolis on the public access television channel as well. Altogether, we are bringing a massive presence, a massive capacity to create conversations, stories, narratives around our identity and the future that we are responsible for and accountable to, around the history that has brought us here, around appreciating, valuing, elevating the struggle that those ancestors brought. And the ancestors are still with us. They're guiding us right now as we speak, all around us, right? We have to continue to acknowledge them and invite them to support and order our steps in a way that bring us success. So that's my commercial. I'm asking people that are listening to support this conversation and to help grow it. With that, I'm going to pass the stick back to Dr. Williams, because Dr. Williams, I just wanted you to talk about this question of the history of violence that we've experienced and how that violence, almost unbeknownst to us, is reflected in every step and every thought. And we see the impact of the steps and the thoughts today, and we say, oh, that's a bad person. or, oh, that's a sick person. But that's not really the story.
No.
Story is deeper than that. It's bigger than that. And how do we get to creating the true story? Dr. Williams, I'm passing the talking stick back to you.
Well, thanks, Al. One of the things that I think about is the fact that not only the fact that people may not have the true story about our history associated with violence, is that they may not have somebody to talk to get the right story. Or if they're, I think another thing too is that when we're affected by these experiences, sometimes including prejudice and racism, we deal with it in isolation oftentimes. There isn't a sort of a group place where people can get together and have conversations about it. They may have it individually with family members and such, but, to have an opportunity to reflect on it, I'm not so sure that we always do. So as I think about it, I'll tell you this one story about a friend of mine who was a part of a study that they were doing in Harvard, through Harvard, as a brother who was a professor there. And he went to my friend who has this program in DC. And so they were going to different places and asking the community about their perspective associated with violence and child abuse and neglect. So when they went in and started asking people, how they were treated associated with abuse or discipline, some people raised their hand and said, well, when I was wrong or when I did something wrong, I could expect my parents to come and spank me and to, get the belt, to get the whatever, to spank them, And so, but then there were some other people who were there too, who said that they grew up in a Black household, but they never had their parents spank them. And it was sort of a shock to those people who grew up in a household, where they got spanked. Now, I had to tell you, I was one of the ones, I wasn't at that meeting, but I was one of the ones that I remember my mother spanking me in Technicolor, that when I remember the first and last time I stole something, I was like 4 years old. And then when we got back to the house, my mother ended up spanking me. Then I ended up at a choice between animal crackers and Cracker Jacks. And so she got the animal crackers, and I think I put the Cracker Jacks in these bib overalls that I had. And so I said, I got a surprise for you. She says, what is it? So we got outside the store, and I showed her. So we had to come back to the store. I had to apologize to the guard and to the person who was to the cashier and to the manager. Then I got home, and then she spanked me. And the first and last time I ever stole anything. And when I talk to people about that, I wasn't angry with my mother for spanking me. But one of the skills that my mother had was the fact that not only did she spank me and discipline me because I was doing something wrong, but she also got a chance to show me love as, incorporated in that. But she clearly let me know when I did something wrong. And my dad wasn't a person that would spank. He just didn't do it. It's not like he didn't restrict or something. It just wasn't him. So, but I think that, doing the work that I've done over the years, I realized that there's been some people who only have one set of skills. That is to react out of anger and not know, what was that phrase, if the only tool that you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And I see people where everything looks like a nail. So, and then we had that perspective that what you're supposed to do is strike out and have discipline rather than having timeouts and restrict or take, privileges away from kids when they do something wrong. And we have to, and sometimes people may feel as though we're soft when we do that, but it's another way to do it, and we've got to learn those other ways to be able to do it. So, and then I think over history, when we've heard the sort of slave narratives about, how we learn to be violent, abusive, with folks, and it's something that we need to think about, and that violence was a part of that. But we're not in slavery anymore. We even though we deal with effects of those things, we have to learn different ways to behave and interact with people. And we also can't end up taking what we learned as a consequence of slavery and say that that's a healthy way to respond. It's something that we understand, but we have to find other ways to behave. So in this narrative, this discussion about other people saying that their parents don't respect them is not an anomaly. It's not something that's unusual. It's something that, exists. And we have to embrace that too, but also learn from it. So go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm excited to hear, because when you started talking about getting spankings, I was doing a parenting group, and the women in the group, we were talking about it. They explained to me that spanking takes place in different degrees. So, and they even had like a common explanation that spanking was the least harmful. You spank little ones, but your hand, and it's so many seconds long. Then it went to, you get a whipping, and they said there's a difference between a spanking and a whipping and a beat down. And that in our community, if you get spanked or you get a whipping, that shouldn't be anything to take you to jail about. But a beat down is when a parent starts literally leaving marks, hitting you, doing all those kind of things. And I thought a lot about when I grew up. I remember the strongest discipline, and this is another whole story. A strongest discipline that I experienced was when my father, who chose not to whip the girls, he would whip the boys, but rarely would he get me and my sister Lisa. But he would look at me, and sometimes he would have tears in his eyes, and he'd say, "Bravada, I'm so disappointed." Ah, man, when he said that, I'd rather get whooped, because it was like it was such an attachment to having parental approval and joy in your behavior. And when they say they're disappointed, oh my Lord, I couldn't hardly hold it. So I think what I like to see as we talk about this phenomena of policies in our government and practices in our government, they say that the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. And I know when I went to Nigeria, I saw children running around, and I was there for like my first week. I didn't see any kid get a whipping. And I asked my husband what was going on. And guess what? They didn't get whippings because they had a village of eyes on them. So before they get in trouble, this person, Miss Annie, she would say, "Stop, before they do, So they were vigilant in watching the babies. And that's when I learned that whipping, which is now seen as normal, was really brought by colonialism and putting people, quote unquote, in their place. So now as we begin these conversations, I still want to bring it back to the fact that we got to go, but back to the idea of policy. So if we have policies that devalue us and don't want, it's not about punishing for learning, because discipline means to teach. It means that they put people, our children and our community members, either on the jail track or the well track. And the well track means there's nothing substantively wrong with you. You just need to learn and have support. The jail track is you're deviant, you're crooked, you have to be contained. And that is heavily aligned with the post-slavery experiences that we have as Black people in America. And with that, I'll pass the talking stick to our fearless leader, Brother Al McFarlane. Bring it on home.
We're out of time. What a wonderful conversation. Thank you, Dr. B. Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Brenda Lyle Gray. And thank you, Sister Flowers. Let me just say that the Flowers name is gold in this community. Your family, your brother, your sister, your mom, your niece, all of them just doing phenomenal work in service of our community and our people. And I simply want to acknowledge you publicly and thank you publicly for all you bring to our community. With that, we'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarland. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Oh, Queen Justice, where are you? Did they beat you up or no? Lock you on the ground, take the crown away from you?
Oh, Lady Liberty, red, white, and blue. Did they take your dignity with their bigotry? Teach you that you're born to lose.
Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you break.
We've had enough
of all the money you make.
We've had enough.
No more life at stake.
We've had enough.
This is a proclamation.
It's been 400 years and we're 400 late. Together we stand from state to state. Going back in time won't make America great. We need justice now, people won't wait.
Action, no more distraction. Every step we take, we gain traction. If it can happen to one, it can happen to all. United we stand, divided we fall. Free or guilty, it's gonna get filthy. Better believe, roll up your sleeves. It's gonna get rough, it's gonna be tough. We all agree, we've had enough.
We've had enough
of all the rules you were breaking.
We had enough
of all the money you were making.
We had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We had enough.
This is a proclamation.
Free or guilty,
It's gonna get filthy.
better believe. Just roll up your sleeves.
It's gonna get rough. It's gonna be tough.
We all agree, we've had enough. We've had enough
Of all the rules you're breaking.
We've had enough.
All the money you're making.
We've had enough.
No more life gets taken.
We've had enough.
This is the proclamation.
We've had enough.
Trayvon Martin and Tommy Rice.
We've had enough.
Michael Brown and Eric gonna pay the price.
We've had enough.
Philando, Breonna, George Floyd.
We've had enough.
So many